You're ready to start some seeds so you can begin having a flower garden, but you don't know where to start or even all the strategies that are available to you. I have quite a few here on the farm, and I'm going to talk about them today because there are pros and cons to each. There's reasons why you would use some and not others, and we are going to get into that.
Welcome to Learn Cut Flower Growing. Whether you are an inspiring green thumb, a busy mompreneur, or simply seeking a passion, you are in the right place. If I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I would do it smarter. And that's what I'm sharing here. I want to take years off your learning and help you bloom with confidence in your garden. Each episode, I'll share practical tips and ideas, heartfelt stories, and expert insights to help you grow and find balance in your journey. I'm Paula Rice, your cut flower farmer guide. I've been growing for 16 years, and I'm an expert in my field, literally. So grab your gardening gloves and listen to me while you work, or grab a cup of coffee and relax as you learn to manage a cut flower garden and business. So as I scale down, I find myself running into problems again, having to rethink what I'm going to grow, number one, and how I'm going to grow it. It's a whole new strategy because in the old model, I was using the vacuum seeder as much as I could to buy back my time. I was using trays of 200 cell plugs, and that just fit perfectly into the regime that I've built over the years to get them out into the field. So that really, how much I was growing, where I was selling my flowers really informed what I was doing in the seeding part. Well, now I need a lot less. And so I am introducing strategies that I used way back when I was just starting to grow flowers. You know, we were back last week using the soil blockers because I just need maybe 60 plants of something. And I also, believe it or not, I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I would just order in plugs now. Maybe I don't want to start seeding in January or February. Maybe I would just order in some plugs for that hoop house planting and not turn on greenhouses early. I might even pencil that out and see if that would make any sense. But anyways, the whole point is that I'm back to figuring out smaller systems. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm kind of excited to share all the options that are out there because in the long run, what you want to do is you want to get things standardized and do things in a certain way so that year after year, you're fine-tuning those systems and making everything as simple as possible. So let's start our lineup of choices with the trays. The 10-20 trays that you can purchase. And they're 10-20 because they're 10 inches wide and they're 20 inches long. And you can buy a tray that will have 128 plugs, 200 plugs or holes. That's holes. You can get them to have 50. You can have them at 75, and you can get them to even be a lot more than that. I don't grow in anything smaller than a 200. I know if you order in Lysianthus or something like that, you can get 288, 300 or more. But those little holes get pretty darn small. And it just really becomes a challenge to keep them watered, and you just don't have to do that very often. If I was going to seed, I wouldn't do it. I would just seed my seed into a tray of dirt and then transplant them out if I was going to do that. But with those 10-20s, it's really great because a 128 is obviously bigger than a 200. But the cool thing is that you basically have 200 baby plants in the same amount of space as that you could have 128 or 50 or 75. And that's really what you want to think about. Like if you have a really big seed and it's a vigorous little plant that grows fast, maybe you would start them in a 75. But by and large, you'll start in 128s or 200s. I had a few things that I would seed as a 128, but I moved almost everything into 200s, much smaller plug size. And believe it or not, I took those to the field at that small size, just because I could get so many plants in a space growing on my shelf system where I started them. And then even in the greenhouse, because I have a small greenhouse. And so if you're going to do, back in the day, if I was going to do 10,000 stock, I certainly didn't want to do them in 1/28. I was going to do them in 200s, especially if I had processes in place so that those 200s could still thrive and produce a beautiful flower in a certain amount of time. So that's the pros, is that you can sit there and play with, do I need 50? Do I need 1/28? Or do I need 200s? And they all take the same amount of space in your greenhouse for that. The cons is that they're kind of expensive. It's an investment to buy those. I was in Walmart the other day, and just to get one little system set up where you had the dome and the bottom and the cells, it was $5.79 at a retail level. And so at a wholesale level, probably you're around $2 a tray. I mean, who knows what the times and inflation are going to do. But overall, if you are starting an operation and 100 of those, that can be expensive. But I do recommend that you buy quality ones. Like, don't buy the cheapest. You don't have to buy the more expensive, but you want these to last year after year after year. Literally, you guys, I will have some of mine that are just half broken, but I'm just like, no, I'm going to use you to the last straw because I know that things are always getting more expensive. So I use them. And then you are going to make sure that when you purchase those, that you have, I am inside, so I get the bottom tray that does not have holes because I don't want water dripping all over the place. But if you were starting all of your seeds in a greenhouse or you were doing it outside, well, then you could have holes. You could even start them in that webbed base, which is really good. So those are fantastic to have if you can do the investment. If you can't, then you just have miscellaneous containers laying around here and there. You've saved pony packs from the years past. That's great. Those pony packs that you get from, when you buy petunias and things like that, those are pretty big holes. They're going to take a lot of soil. And when I'm doing plugs, in time, you're going to really catch on from the time that you seeded that little plug to the time that you actually plant it. And you're going to discover the perfect sized cell to get that done in the shortest amount of time. So for me, I turned to the 200s, and then I was counting back the days for maturity. Like a 1/28 is obviously going to take more time to get the roots developed and make a plug so that you can actually pull it out and plant it, where a 200 is smaller, and that would just happen a lot faster. So it speeds up from the time that you seeded to the time that you're going to actually plant. So if you planted it in a 50 or these pony packs, which is what I was talking about, you can see that, okay, that's going to take a certain amount of time to get that root wad developed so that you can pull that plug out and plant it. So that's another consideration to think about when you're thinking about what to start with. But overall, I started with 200s. You could start with anything that you have and make it as hodgepodge as you need to. There's also the vacuum seeder that you can purchase to go with these 10-20 trays. And when you begin to get busy and selling your flowers, one thing you're going to want to kind of do is buy your time back. And when you are seeding by hand, that just takes a certain amount of time, and that's fine. You can do a time audit of yourself, find out how long that takes you, and maybe you can hire some young people, some kids, and get them to help you do your seeding. That is a great idea. But overall, the vacuum seeder, if you are doing a lot of something, that really goes fast. Like, it's shocking how fast that goes. And we did have one of those to do it. Now, the cons of that, like, you buy back time and it's amazing, but you absolutely do not need it if you are a small grower. Like, because, I don't know, you have to have a good quantity of seed to pour into it so that it will fill all of the holes and things like that. So it's expensive. It's actually really expensive because, first of all, you have to decide, okay, am I doing 1/28s? Or am I doing 200s? What am I doing? And then you have to buy a different plate for every type of size of seed that you have. Not every type, but let's say there's 8 possible plate sizes to buy the holes, and you have to buy 3 or 4 of them for the type of seeds that you're growing. So, okay, that's kind of spendy because I think the last time I bought them, they were around $200 each plate. Okay, so you have to decide, am I doing 1/28? Okay, yes, I'm doing 1/28. All right, now I need 3 or 4 different plates to accommodate the different sizes of seeds that I typically seed. And so if you want to pop in a 200, guess what? You can't use the 1/28 plates. You have to go buy a whole new set of the 3 or 4 different size seeds to fit a 200. So the whole seeding system with cut flowers can get pretty expensive if you go to those vacuum seeders because our seeds are so small and so varied in size and shape. But I bought it initially because I was doing 10,000 stock, and oh my goodness, that would speed that process up to just a couple of hours, because you do have to load the trays and things like that, rather than let's do it for a full day or more, a couple of days. So that's really nice. When I first started farming or growing, I bought myself a wand seeder, and I did not like that at all. You would change out the needles on the wand seeder and all of your seeds would be put into a little trough. And I think if you kept going at it, it would work out pretty good. But overall, I didn't like it. If there was any debris in your seed at all, it would clog the little needles that were taking up the air. So I kind of retired that one and didn't go for it. I think that those would work fairly good for vegetables, but I don't recommend those. And at the end of all of this, if I'm going to seed something by hand, I really truly just cut off the corner of a cardboard box, like a cracker box or a cereal box, and I tape that together, and then I grab a toothpick and I seed from that. I just scooch out each seed with a toothpick. And with all the options out there, I just have always defaulted to that one because it seemed like every time I was trying something, it didn't quite work right, or it would get broken or lost. And these little things I just always have, and I've used them ever since the beginning. Couldn't get any cheaper than that. Okay, and I'm going to move into the paper pot transplanter system. And I bought this system because I knew I wanted to scale down a couple of years ago. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to invest in this and start learning about it. And I will say there is a learning curve to that. We attempted a few things for 2 years in a row now, and I would not say I've been successful with them. You've got to get those plants into the field on time, or their roots just start growing together, which makes them so they don't pull apart as you drive your little instrument through the field. So it has a learning curve to it. But it also has a seeding system with it that is not vacuum based. You're still down to getting the different plates for the different sizes of seed. I like it. You just kind of tilt the plates back and forth within a frame and the seeds fall into it. And I think that would work really, really well. The system overall is kind of spendy, but if you are a person who's not using plastic mulch and you go out there and you just till up an area and then you drive your little machine through it, and then you're going to be really diligent about getting out there and hoeing your rows regularly, I really picture that system being super fast. Like, if I could move into that system, I have enough land. Like if you've got just a few raised beds and something like that, maybe it isn't totally appropriate. But for me, I have enough space in a field that I could go far more traditional, not doing anything, no raised beds or anything like that. And pulling that down, laying those out. I mean, for a one-person show, I really kind of want to inch more and more to that system and see if I can't get it to work for me really, really well. I am pretty dependent on plastic mulch and landscape fabric to keep the weeds down. And I pictured myself scaling down and just kind of doing what I see everybody else doing and laying landscape fabric. But part of me wants to just be a person that goes out there and hoes every morning. Like, yeah, I'm going to go hoe the garden and stay on top of that. I really like the look and all of that jazz. And anyways, but I do have a lot of weed pressure. So I'm putting that under my hat, but that system has a lot of potential. Yeah, I like that system. So I'll keep playing with that and get back to you on that one. And then our final one that I just recommend, I put out a whole cut and come again flower PDF to help people who are just starting to think about flower gardening, because that's just the easiest garden to ever plant. It's so productive and abundant, and it's a fantastic start. But I really recommended starting out with the soil blocking. And you are going to save a ton of money. You don't have to buy all those 10, 20 trays. You don't have to buy a big system. It's just this little soil blocking frames that are metal, and you learn how to load them up with soil, and you pull the trigger tight and it squishes out all these lovely little cells, and you can do 20 at a time. And they're very small, but they will produce a full-on plug to take straight to the field. And they take up very little space. Like if you had a cookie sheet or something to put them onto and you put them under lights, oh my goodness, you would have a lot of plants in a small amount of space. And if you were really staying small, you could just kind of get the meat trays, the styrofoam meat trays, and put like 2 or 3 or 4 of those on, 4 of the 20s on there, and grow a really nice crop, because you can put them under the lights, raise the lights and all the different sizes. There's very little root disturbance when you go to pull them apart and put them into the ground. So that's really nice. They do not use very much soil at all, so you're not buying a bunch of soil. And they're easy to bump up if you find that you're not able to get into the garden soon enough. You can bump them into another soil block it has a little square indention in it, so that you can absolutely just pick it up and place it in there, and voila, you have transplanted. The cons to this system, and I'm just remembering this because here's a cool thing. I have all these systems, so I can actually kind of shake up things that I need to do. And I was late planting for my hoop house this year, and I was like, you know what? Pull out the soil blocks. Okay, they're going to produce a little plant really, really fast in that cell, and I'll be able to probably be very close to being on time if I use my soil blocker. But it reminded me how much slower the soil blockers are. And that's fine. I'm just spoiled because I had the vacuum seeders, and I would have someone run those, and that was great. So we were seeding away, and it was kind of nice because now, back in the day, I would dedicate an entire hoop house to like, oh my gosh, this is going to be ranunculus, this is going to be anemones, this is going to be Godetia, and you would plant, lots and lots of plants, hundreds and thousands of those. So I really didn't have a hoop house that had a lot of variety in it. Like, of course, you could go in, you could do something, you could create a bouquet out of something, but overall, it wasn't super diversified. And so this year, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the farm stand, and I want to be able to create beautiful multi-species bouquets. And so I'm switching my greenhouse to have a little bit of a lot of different things. And so the soil blocker, I didn't have to do 128 of something. I could say, let's just go with 60 agrostemma. Let's go with 40 calendula. Let's go with, 50 bupleurum. And let's do 200 snapdragons. So you can say I'm building out my hoop house with things that I think will bloom about the same time, so that will be my earliest flowers, so we can have bouquets as soon as possible in the season. And so that really shook things up. Like I'm not using all of the big seed trays anymore, but I did tell myself, like, Paula Rice, what are you freaking out about? Like, I used to be really anal about, oh my gosh, plant the whole cell, the whole tray. Don't plant half of a 128, plant the whole thing. Or I was worried about germination rates. If this 1020 is going to take up space in the greenhouse, we have to maximize production. We have to make sure that we have as good a seed germination rate in this as possible. And, we just want every cell to have a plant in it, right? Even if you transplant and pot up and all that jazz. And today I'm like, I don't care. Maybe if this slower process really bothers me, maybe I will just pull out my 200s in the seeder and say, I only want 100 plants of this. Or I want 60 plants of this, and just put 60, about whatever I think is like 60 seeds, put it in there. And of course it's going to be super spotty. I don't know, you guys, truly, I'm just making this up as I go right now, because I'm trying to convince myself, if you really want to go fast, if you really need to go fast, today, in my new model, what I'm doing this year, I may not care that 200 plants did not come up. I might be okay with, I took a pinch of what I thought was 50 plants and seed it up really super fast and just pull out the next one. I actually have the space to do it that way. And that's what I'm telling you guys. Once you have several options in your toolkit, you can just shake it up. There's really no rules when you want to do it your way, right? But I do recommend having those soil blocking if you need to save money and you are just entry level and you are just trying things out. And even if you're doing vegetable gardens on top of it, it's just really a system that goes both ways. If you've got kids to help you or farm hands to help you, it's not a bad system if you are tight on space. Maybe you just have one shelf in your bedroom. Anyways, I highly recommend that one. And the 1020s are great. And, oh yeah, here's another thing I thought of as I'm like, okay, I don't need 100 of these. Okay, put this in your head. You're loading up the space of a 1020 and you're like, man, I just need to maximize my space. I want 50 of, let's say, okay, we're going to cut up a 200. We're going to cut up a 200 cell plug tray into 50s. Like literally, I'm taking scissors and I'm cutting apart my 200s, okay? Because I'll put them, all of these different ones, into a solid tray and grow different flowers in them. And the reason why I cut them apart is because your flower seeds germinate at a different time frame for each variety. So it's not like I can put in one solid 200. I can't put some stock in here and then maybe some bupleurum in here, because bupleurum is going to take like a couple of weeks to germinate. Plus, it wants to be dark. So you cannot seed it in the same tray. So you have to plant seeds that like the same type of germination temperature and the same type of light, and then they pop up at the same amount of time. So I cut them apart to get the amount that I need without using an entire 200. And then as they pop up, I can pull them out off of the heat and put them under the lights. And so I just thought, okay, yeah, I don't have to go buy a bunch of little ones. I'll just cut apart the ones that I have. And it has been fun. It has been fun for me to rethink this business and walk into some challenges and be solving them. I think that's why I'm an entrepreneur anyways. It's like, how can we improve the system? How can we make this work? How can we be more efficient? How can I do this as cheap as possible in half the time? These things that we always think about. So I'm having a good time rethinking setting up the greenhouse with all different kinds of flowers. And you guys, I can't wait for you to start your seeds and just dive in, look into the different methods that I've talked about. In the long run, you kind of want to standardize your systems, but that just takes, walking forward and finding clarity. And that's the main thing. Sometimes if you can just talk out loud or draw it and watch it or just do something, you begin to understand a lot better. So there's to that, you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Again, do all the things. Share this podcast with everybody. If anyone's thinking about growing seeds out there, I hope this helps them. We're going to have a blog post on this on top of it, so you can always link to that and maybe see pictures and things like that. Next week, we're going to be talking about the seeding that I do in January, February, and March, the things that I'm thinking about when I'm seeding those particular flowers, and why. You guys have a blessed week. May God bless your farms and make them productive and abundant. I'm thinking of your success always, and thanks for tuning in.